Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video episode on the Forgotten Weapons Library. I'm Ian, and today I have an Austrian M95 carbine to take a look at. Actually, we're not really taking a look at the rifle. I have this because we're taking a look at a book about these rifles. These have been on the market for a little while here in the US, pretty cheap. $100, $120 will get you a fairly nice one all day long. I got this one for $80. It's kind of a beater, but it was neat. I wanted to have a representative sample, maybe do a project with it at some point. But a lot of people ignore these because they're an 8x56 rimmed, which is a bit difficult to get in the US. And well, some people just look down on them because they're not one of the quote-unquote major types of rifles. This is a Mannlicher carbine. And I thought it'd be cool to take a look at a book on the Mannlichers, specifically Mannlicher Military Rifles by Paul Scarlata. We've looked at one of Mr. Scarlata's books before, his book on the Gewehr 88. It was quite good. Figured, let's check out the one on the Mannlichers too. Ferdinand Ritter von Mannlicher was really an underappreciated gun designer of his time. He was active in Austria, which is, of course, one of the real heartlands of weapons building at the time. And he was building guns all the way through what was really the golden age of firearms design, from the late 1800s to the first couple decades of the 1900s. So, let's take a look in here and see what we've got. So, behind the nice glossy cover, we have a bunch of good stuff here. Scarlata starts off with a discussion of a little bit of biographical information on Mannlicher. There isn't a whole lot of it available, but talk about what he did, where he came from. Mannlicher was pretty closely involved with the Steyr company in Austria. He worked for them pretty much his whole career. Another one of the early chapters here talks about some of the early work that Steyr did, getting itself well established. Initially, they did a bunch of conversions of rifled muskets into breech loaders. So, a little discussion of that. Then we're going to go into some of Mannlicher's early rifles. You can see here a number of different designs. Interestingly, here's an early one that used either 3 or 4 revolving magazine tubes in the buttstock for a total capacity of either 15 or 20 rounds, which was quite significant at the time. It was unfortunately deemed too bulky and not ultimately adopted, but there's some good discussion of a bunch of the early guns that Mannlicher was involved with. Let's see, moving on, discussion of the military production Mannlichers. This is what most of us are familiar with, including a number of guns that you may not be familiar with. For example, did you know that the Swiss actually adopted a Mannlicher, despite their own use of the Schmidt-Rubin design? When they needed a carbine, they went to Mannlicher and Steyr. I'd love to find one of those for the reference collection here. So quite a bit more discussion on the Steyr long rifles. These didn't change a whole lot between World War I and the end of World War II and the end of their real use. But there are a good number of different varieties, and Scarlata does a good job discussing the differences between all of them. Now, finally, one of the interesting chapters at the end is Mannlicher's imitators, or it's a discussion of the other straight pull rifles that were made and adopted by military forces. So, talks about the Schmidt-Rubin, the Ross rifle, the Winchester Lee, their pros and cons, and how they differ technically. So, some good, interesting information here. And, as with Scarlata's book on the Gewehr 88, he ends with a brief chapter where he took out a couple Mannlichers and some other rifles and did some shooting to compare them. And that's always neat to see. We definitely approve of old guns like this getting taken out and actually used. Alright, so if you happen to go out like I did and picked up one of these cheap M95 carbines, if you're interested in finding out more about where it came from, and maybe you want to collect some more of the similar guns that Mannlicher designed that were used by people like Austria, you should check out a copy of this book. It is still in print, easily available. You can pick it up on Amazon. Thanks for watching.